Silent, if you may, so that we can listen to the 5 ministers representing the Arab world. And they'll be speaking to us about their national sustainable development plans and the importance of technology in their national plans. What achievements they're making, what innovations they have, what new initiatives they have in their countries, and where the Arab world is heading with these national plans. I am honored to have with me first Dr. Khalid Mahdi, Secretary General of the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council for Planning and Development of Kuwait. Dr. Khalid is a chemical engineer in training, and he contributed to the establishing of, or to the publication of several studies. What is this static I hear, says Giselle Khouri. There's static. Please turn your mobile phones off. One of your mobile phones, please turn off your phones, or else we will hear the static. At least put them aside. Very good. So I was introducing the ministers. I started with Dr. Khalid Mahdi, Secretary General of the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council for Planning and Development of Kuwait. He is a chemical engineer in training. He published many studies and research pieces. With him, we see Muhammad Saeed Al-Saadi, Minister of Planning and International Cooperation of Yemen. He was a Minister of Industry and Trade previously. Welcome, sir. We also have Mr. Lahsan Daudi. Did I pronounce your name right? Minister delegated to the Minister of General Affairs and Governance in the Kingdom of Morocco. He also was a Deputy Prime Minister or Vice Prime Minister, and he used to be Dean of the Faculty of Law and a former Minister of Education, Higher Education and Scientific Research. Next to him, we have Dr. Imad Abdelghani Al-Sabuni, Chairman of the Planning and International Cooperation Authority from Syria. Welcome, sir. Dr. Imad Sabuni is also a member in the Executive Board of the International University of Science and Technology and used to be a Minister of Information Technology, and in the Syrian dialect they use the word taqana. So she's asking him, what is taqana? He explained it's technology. Also we have Talal bin Salman al-Rahbi, who is Deputy Secretary General of Supreme Council for Planning from the Sultanate of Oman. He also served as Deputy CEO of the Information Technology Authority, ITA, and he was elected first Deputy Chairman of the UNESCO Institute for Statistics in 2011. You are all welcome. I will give each one of you some time to present the national plan in answer to the question, what is happening in your countries? I will give you 5 minutes. Please do not exceed them. 5 minutes, are you sure? Yes, 5 minutes. Just to be clear. Yes, I will start with my stopwatch. Use technology, please. Would you like to stand at the lectern or would you like to stay seated? I'll stay seated. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate, I would like to thank unescwa for the kind invitation. I thank the Undersecretary General and Executive Secretary of unescwa for convening this important meeting. It is important in content and in form. The Sustainable Development Agenda in the Arab region is highly important, especially beyond the latest industrial revolution we have seen in technology. We will miss the train if we do not take it as soon as possible. We will enter into a tunnel that is endless. The fourth industrial revolution, as everyone knows, will cost us and the world many jobs that are present today. We have to pay attention to that. We are losing many of today's jobs. We, since we are responsible for planning in our countries, we want to create job opportunities that are decent for the largest category of our citizens in the Arab world, which is the category of young people. Discussing this issue is timely. We must not come out of this discussion with only superficial remedies. In answer to your question, what my country did in this sense, the state of Kuwait launched the 50-year development plan as a series of plans in order to achieve Kuwait Vision 2035. The 5-year plan includes a knowledge-based economy. In definition, the knowledge-based economy is the use of knowledge products as a part of the economic cycle. And this is what we're doing for Kuwait. Arab countries in general, and specifically Kuwait, cannot be considered leaders in the production of knowledge, but we are consumers of that knowledge rather than its producers. Knowledge-based economy requires a series of policies that need to enter into force and that are concerned with concepts of innovation. Innovation concepts are easy to talk about, but very difficult to implement or to create an ecosystem that is sufficiently sound to be able to implement or to produce these concepts. It's not easy because it depends on 3 main pillars, which we mentioned in our vision. First of all, the human capital. And we do not only mean in terms of education, but we also talk about the basic skills that need to be in harmony with the labor market. The second component is the structural capital, meaning an ecosystem or an environment that is conducive to this innovation. And we need to have a series of laws that would allow them. We also need administrative procedures. And more importantly, the government language needs to be a language that is understood by the private sector, because all of these innovations, at the end of the day, need to use common language. So we've spoken about the structural capital, then the human capital. Let's move on now to another important pillar, which is related to knowledge-based economies, which we call networking capital. Because knowledge-based economies depend greatly on creating a knowledge network linked or that links the state itself and the neighboring countries in a way that would create a platform for knowledge sharing. Give us an example, if you may. The mechanisms of transforming innovations and ideas produced in universities, let's say, are usually or end up usually in closed doors and no one knows about them. Even if they are digital, they are not used in any practical application. This has become costly for us because universities have much knowledge production, but now this is only limited to academic circles. We need to come out of this phase to transform these knowledge products into true products For the market, you mean? Yes, for the market. And this can only happen in partnership with the private sector and other worldwide networks so that we can become a stock exchange of knowledge. And this requires, of course, laws and legislations on copyright and intellectual property, laws that regulate patents, and laws in transformation pathways from an idea to a product. So innovation is not a new concept in the Arab world. It is present. But up until now, at least in Kuwait, we still suffer from silos among the different state entities. And I think this is the case in other Arab countries. This is why I say we need some kind of networking in order to have a conducive environment or ecology that produces this innovation. This was mentioned in the development plan of Kuwait, which, after approval by the Kuwaiti parliament, will be transformed into a law, and thus putting these plans into effect will become mandatory. You say it's a 5-year plan, right? Yes. Your 5 minutes are up. If it's a 5-year plan, this means it's a plan over 5 years. No, this is a 5-year plan that will state the foundations. When will it start? The first started between 2015-2020. The second 5-year plan will focus more on digitization, which will be between 2015-2020. Thank you very much for sticking to the time, although I did not respect my own rule. Minister from Yemen, can you please tell us to what extent can you plan in Yemen under the current circumstances? It is a national development plan using technology and integrating technology for sustainable development. And this is something that all Arab countries have approved for 2030. But what is happening in Yemen? God's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to the Undersecretary General and to everyone who had a share in organizing this important meeting, which, as everyone is saying, tackles an important issue to us, which is the use of technology in sustainable development. Undoubtedly, Yemen is moving through a crisis. Starting the 1950s, Yemen, and despite the lack of capacities, started implementing development plans. We had positive steps towards establishing knowledge and education institutions and using education as a development tool. Yemenis were able thus to move from a stage of backwardness to a stage of modernity. Dr. Mahdi reminded me of the education institutions. And when Kuwait played an important role during that period of time when it established the University of Sana'a in Yemen, and we thank the state of Kuwait for that. We in Yemen in the past allowed for the Yemenis to be educated. Today, we have more than 6 million students in public education. And in higher education, we have 16 universities. 6 are government or public universities, and 6 of them are under construction. And we have several private universities. Of course, these universities try to meet the need for higher education in Yemen, but it is not sufficiently doing so due to lack of finances. Yemen, as you know, has several needs which it lacks, so perhaps this issue did not take priority. But despite that fact, we have 25 research and studies centers, and we have good examples to be followed in some because their results were used to set important plans based on sound statistics and research. Until the events of 2011, when Yemen entered into the will for change period, which was countered violently, and this ultimately led Yemen into a whirlpool of violence which had its repercussions on scientific and research efforts. In the 1970s, we started with 3-year development plans and then with 5-year plans. In the 1980s and 90s, when the Yemen unity was proclaimed, the two Yemens were joined in one Yemen. This was a quantum leap, but this also led to an extreme increase in costs and prices and needs. Please be brief, Your Excellency, but now what is happening? What is the development plan now? I know that it is difficult to answer that question when you are in the heart of or in the middle of a war. Our people are cohesive. We are trying to overcome many difficulties, and of course the humanitarian aspects take priority. In addition to shelter, food, we are trying to find the basic security to be able to move on to an institutional level. As you know, and you have tried a war, unfortunately, wars does not leave you with any room to move. There are fast-paced variables and changes, the hit and run aspect of wars, of course, impedes development and technology. Especially when many of the people who are carrying the arms and who are parties to the conflict itself are illiterate, are ignorant, and they thus neglect many of the tools needed for development, such as technology, a sound economic cycle, etc. We all know that figures and statistics related to the national economy cannot even be produced under unstable circumstances. So today, what are you focusing on? Today we're focusing on exiting the war to have stability before we can be launched into the development projects. Yemeni people are successful outside the borders of Yemen, but inside Yemen and due to the war, the opposite is happening. A Yemeni poet once said, "The saddest and most miserable people in the world are those who live or rule, who live in Yemen or rule the Yemenis." Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I will give the floor to Minister Lahsa Al-Baroudi from Morocco. Let me ask you about your plan. What are the achievements made in terms of technology in Morocco, And what were or how were you able to provide job opportunities to young people? I'm managing your time following my watch. So let me answer briefly. We don't produce technology. It's only normal and natural to consume it. The problem is to see how we can see or to be able to produce technology itself. Morocco has an open economy. We have a free trade agreement with the United States, with some Arab countries, with Turkey, with the European Union. So Morocco is forced to develop technology in order to be able to have these relations. We will produce 650,000 cars in 2019 with their engines produced and manufactured in Morocco using renewable energy. We have 60% of cars manufactured in Morocco. We expect it to reach 80%. Also aviation, all major aviation companies, Boeing, Airbus, they all invest in Morocco and they're working there. So we have to ask ourselves, are we able to meet the requirements of a new production or modern production? Thank God we say yes. But unfortunately, we have a brain drain. They come, but they take away our youth from us. We invest in them, in their education, in their training, and they steal them from us. This is in technological industry, yes, and also in scientific research. Today in Morocco, we're benefiting from statistics and studies from Europe. We are benefiting from billions of euros because we have a relation between European research institutes and Moroccan research institutes. Every university has a technology follow-up center and startups. This is not an option for us, but the pace is still not up to expectations and to par. We need to see how we can develop our laboratories. Today, our Moroccan youth are going to Sweden, to Germany, to benefit and to learn. So your market is abroad, it's not in Morocco. Yes, our internal market is very small. The Arab market is non-existent. So we have to go to Europe. What we have is not a true economy at the Arab world. We have some inter-Arab relations. So we're talking about startups because of the non-existence of an Arab market. Yes, because we have small islands. We think or we have a vision of an Arab world, but it's not present. It's part of our hearts, or we feel it, yes. But this generation may not have the same emotions we have towards the Arab region because there's no market for them, or else we would be able to encourage scientific research and study. Now, we even export to Europe without having any customs barriers. So you are an Arab brain, but which has a European tendency or Western tendency. This is because reality has imposed this on us. Because we do not have a problem to export our products to Europe, but to other countries or to other entities, we do have many barriers and obstacles before us. We need to have Arab laboratories. Give me the name of one Arab laboratory. You cannot. Every country has its own mini laboratories, and we do not have one joint Arab laboratory or university or innovation centers. So what is the Arab world doing in this field? This is our main challenge. We need to be honest with ourselves and say the Arab world today is not economically present at this level. And this is a question I asked when I was teaching the course on the economy of the Arab world, and I taught them then that it's the economy of Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, etc. If we add them all together, equal an Arab economy, but we do not have one Arab economy. Let's look at Europe. France is a small country. Germany is a small country. They have cooperation. They are all under one umbrella. Give me the name of one Arab country, no matter its wealth, no matter its geographic spread. We do not have any such market. We have small markets. We need to ask these issues or put these issues on the table and deal with them honestly and openly. Thank you. Minister Sabuni, you were Minister of Telecommunications, and I think that there is an organic relation between technology and telecommunications. Do you have a national plan to modernize your programs in order to allow technology to be introduced into your national plans? Thank you. Good afternoon. I thank the Executive Secretary of unescwa and his staff for the good organization of this work, of this meeting. We cannot hear you well, sir. Your microphone is tied to your necktie. I'm not a sound engineer, but I will try to help you. It's by trial and error that we reach scientific discoveries, so there's no problem. You can try. Let me go back to the beginning. Let's reset. As I was saying, I thank the Executive Secretary of unescwa and his staff for the good organization in Syria. We are happy to come back to unescwa after years of absence. To answer your question, and I'll be talking specifically about planning and planning for technology in Syria, then we can talk about this issue more broadly during the Q&A session. When we speak of Syria, we need to differentiate between Syria before the war and Syria during the war, and then Syria post-war, a Syria which needs efforts in all fields, including in terms of planning and in technology and its impact on development. Now, prior to the war, as other Arab countries, we were working according to 5-year development plans. The latest 5-year development plan was the 10th 5-year plan, which came to an end in 2010. We were supposed to start with another 5-year plan, the 11th, after 2011, but it was due to the crisis that we had to put an end to that. During the war, we started using a more responsive plan to the needs, which are usually emergency plans. So if we take the 11th 5-year plan, which was supposed to be implemented, we find in it all the buzzwords related to the knowledge economy sector, related to technology mainstreaming in development, the digital economy, etc. So, if you may, this was supposed to start in 2010, between 2010 and 2015. No, it ended in 2010. It started in 2005, and after there was supposed to be another one. Whatever, whether it's the 10th 5-year plan, which was implemented, or the 11th 5-year plan, which did not see the light, we find all the different buzzwords, as I said, related to science, technology, and innovation. So we had pondered the issue or the idea of having an institution for STIs while focusing on building the human capacities needed and the different partnerships required between the public sector and the private sector, because we know today that governments cannot tango on their own. During the war, this came to a halt. Today, after the end of the majority of the conflict, we started working on two levels. The first level is starting with a mid-term and a long-term planning process, which includes setting a vision of post-war Syria. And here, of course, we need to introduce knowledge-based issues and the issue of mainstreaming technology and development. This, in fact, was mentioned in the 10th five-year plan and the 11th five-year plan, the issue of science, technology, and innovation. We had a policy for them. Now, despite us living in a period of war, the experts working on STIs continued with this policy, and they were able to finalize a certain vision for the Institute in 2017 after a long process of revisions and of adapting and updating of the national STI policy. What is required from us today is for this STI policy to try in the different sectors which will work on development and reconstruction in the future to define specific needs required in terms of scientific research and the use of technology in the general sense. Of course, when I say technology, I do not only mean ICT. ICT is, of course, a main component, but when we speak about technology, we use the broad sense. We mean the technology that would allow us to have quick leaps in reconstruction, because without these fast and wide leaps, we will not be able to catch up the pace of growth and development that we had before the war. So we defined what sectors are required. We launched dialogues with them in order to set priorities for each sector. And we attempted to guide universities, independent research centers, and the private sector in general, because this culture was not present in Syria, the concept of partnering with the private sector in scientific research. So you mean developing the human capital, right? Yes, of course. Yes, Mrs. Giselle, the university is required, or universities in general are required to develop the required human capital, but at the same time they are required to have active participation in producing research and studies. In Syria, for example, today we have a problem in land reclamation. We have a problem in preparing the land for agriculture. We are trying to find agricultural products that can increase the productivity of the land. Also in construction, there are issues related to fast-paced construction, which is linked to the reconstruction of urban areas and human settlements. And we need technology for all of these. And we need to see what studies are required and how to link them with the natural resources. So in general, this is the main headline we're focusing on in order to be able to transform into a knowledge-based economy and to mainstream and integrate technology in development in the different sectors. And this is part of the implementation of the SDGs we are all talking about.
Of course, the crisis in Syria has urged us, or must urge us and push us, to actually better focus on our main targets, to have technology be better oriented in terms of reconstruction and development, in terms of development as per specific priorities. And this, of course, will respond to the main challenges and problems we had encountered in the past 7 or 8 years. So as you have already said, His Excellency was actually positive and optimistic. As His Excellency Minister Dawoodi said, we are supposed to talk about the Arab market for technology, the concept of technology, the joint activities and endeavors in terms of supply and demand in the area where we are working. So now I'm talking more about the needs that need to be targeted. So all this could actually contribute to the producing and to the production of technology. And definitely, technology goes far beyond its use. It's how it is better focused and channeled towards the relevant uses. One final comment. Yes, because you are stretching beyond the 5 minutes. I simply wanted to share with you the human resources and the job opportunities. We're going to talk about the human capital and about the structural capital. Excellency, Mr. Talal bin Salman Al-Rahbi, you put a lot of effort in Oman in terms of technology. Could you please brief us about what's happening in terms of technology in Oman? Allow me at the outset to thank the UN, and I would like to thank you for this excellent preparation. Everybody is happy when the invitation is sent from Beirut, because everyone is deeply fond of Beirut, and like to thank you for your heartfelt welcoming. And of course, the Lebanese people are reputed for their grand receptions and for being great hosts. Regarding the situation in Arab countries, Oman is very close to the Arab countries, to the Arab region. It feels what's happening in Yemen, in Syria, and we do not simply stand in favor of these of the Yemeni and the Syrians as a government, but as well on the population or community level. So we need, of course, to abide by the Arab agreements. But despite all this, as you all know, we focus on the internal situation, and when we show interest to the situation on the ground, this reflects in the policies, and the impact of the situation in southern Oman has been very important, and it was actually a devastating impact. But we were lucky to see that investing in infrastructure as well as investing in the technology of information has contributed and assisted Oman in overcoming the problems. This is why we have witnessed, of course, investment in the technology of information and in the technical information. And we have as well witnessed the extent to which it is efficient. And this is, of course, based on what the Sultanate has been encountering. Of course, Oman is one of the pioneer countries, and it is one of the first countries to have developed a 2020 vision, which was elaborated back in 1995, based on which the 5-year plans have been prepared. And now we are working on the on the last, actually, 5-year plan going towards 2020. So the strategy that was developed at the beginning of the millennium, which is the digital strategy, which is related to the investment put in terms of the technology of information and which revolves around infrastructure investments. The 9th 5-year plan has focused on 19 sectors, including the technology of information and communications, in addition to education. Of course, in Oman, plans are usually coupled with, of course, the plans of execution. And what's even more important, to have budgets allocated to the implementation of the relevant plans and programs. Oman is among the very few countries where the higher authority for planning is actually chaired by the Sultan of Oman. And because he is profoundly convinced in the importance of planning, moreover, the Higher Council for Planning is the one that is managing the investment. We have usually the a budget that is run by the Ministry of Finance. But when it comes to the projects, infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and any other project which is not a current project, it is handled by the Higher Council for Planning, which means that a plan is established based on which budgets are allocated for the implementation thereof, which means that the challenges are usually arising when it comes to lacking a budget that could enable implementation. We have in Oman prepared a program which is the National Program for the Reinforcement of Economic Development. And we have been inspired by the Malaysian experience and worked jointly with the Malaysian government, and we have prepared these activities. The main purpose was actually to have all the sectoral strategies and to ensure that there is an accurate program that is implemented in terms of the implementation. The relevant minister and a report, an annual report, is published showcasing the achievements that have been accomplished. So the first report that was published was actually early June. So the first article was showing the plan in addition to what was implemented and the entities that are entrusted or that are actually behind the failures. Moreover, a laboratory is to be laboratory, I mean by this a workshop or a seminar that is held in order to prepare a plan of action along with the relevant budgets. The budget is implemented directly, and the most important partner or the entity that is mostly relevant in the implementation of the project is the private sector. As a government, we have been putting efforts during the past couple of years, and the private sector is informing us that the government is sometimes complicated or is preparing inaccurate plans. However, we are behind the steering wheel of the private sector. Even when it comes to actually typing on the computers regarding the blueprint of the national programs, this typing was made by civil society organizations. Early next year, we will have as well a program which is related to the fourth industrial revolution. And we are as well working on preparing the future vision 2040. All the governorates were involved in the preparation of the program. But of course, we focus on the electronic governance government's program, the development of the knowledge hubs in the governorates in order to develop the skills and capabilities of the citizens, in addition to the preparation of the fiber optic recommendations. And the fiber optic installation is part of the infrastructure, whether in terms of water connections or sewage water connections. So a full-scale budget was prepared for fiber optics. The broadband Omani net organization is actually required to interfere and is the one entrusted with the implementation of the network. The private sector is as well involved in providing these services. This could be among the very few services. The private sector is the one running the services online, and the revenue share is a shared revenue between the government and the implementing agency. Therefore, this provides for space and this gives space for innovation, and the possibility is actually to invest in terms of technology. Moreover, focus is put on the study regarding the ICT, and Oman is the country where a country actually having a large number of graduates, and we have as well a national plan of action which is prepared on this, and hopefully it will be held early next year in order to review the plans of action, in order to prepare an executive plan of action in addition to the budgets necessary. The question is addressed to His Excellency Minister Khalid from Kuwait. To what extent does the ICT budget represents in terms of the full budget? So what is the budget ratio which is awarded to technology? Is it, for example, 0 point how much? Answering this question actually urges me to clarify one thing. We used to talk about a percentage which is devoted to innovation, technology, and development. Unfortunately, in Kuwait, this is a very modest percentage. However, the general policies have prepared a figure. The figure is 1%, the GDP. Now, this percentage varies between 0.3 and less than 0.4. Which is practically the case everywhere in the Arab world. Spending on scientific research, development, innovation, and the production of knowledge is very, very weak. This is why a plan of action is actually developed in order to establish what is called the National Council for Science and Innovation, which is actually a first step based on which the National Commission was established and entrusted with the task of targeting the consumer. 1% of the GDP is actually spent on research, development, innovation, and the production of knowledge. This is on one hand. On the other hand, another issue where I could better answer your question is, where is the technology, where does it stand in the overall national budget? So we have actually a full-fledged program, which is the program of the electronic government, and this project is actually to which are allocated the high budgets in order to achieve or to attain the level where we could say that the administrative services that are provided to citizens are made remotely. So it's not a matter of execution. I'm simply talking about the general policies. So we have the budget and we have the implementation. So basically, we were focusing on the strategic framework and on public policies. There are several projects that are devoted and that revolve around the 7 main axes of the strategy, and every axis is actually related to a series of programs. A series of programs are actually implemented and they benefit from large-scale budgets, such as, for example, a program, the Renewable Energy Program, Inter Alia, which is one of the largest programs, requiring that 15% of power supply in Kuwait is actually made available by means of the renewable energy. So the solar energy in Kuwait has become part of the international sources of energy. So the programs for the investment of the renewable energy, and we have as well a program which is related to investing in the information technology. It's available on the level of the Kuwaiti Center for Scientific Research, and we have as well the programs related to the electronic government. This is one of the programs available on the level of the plan of action and the program, and it relies fully on the nationalization of technology to have it be integrated in the projects of accommodation. How many smart cities are there in Kuwait? Because how many smart units do we have in Kuwait? The southern or the Janub Saad Al Abdallah, which is located southern Kuwait, is actually a smart city. It is actually an initiative made by the government of Kuwait and Southern Korea. It is related to developing partnerships between private and international partnerships. Hopefully, 4 parallel programs will be implemented in order to encourage innovation on the level of small and medium-sized programs. And this program is actually having a $2 billion budget related to encouraging the role in terms of businesses, in terms of business activity, which is something very important. Moreover, we have many successful experiences. As already mentioned, we have the franchises, Kuwaiti franchises, and I have even seen that some of them are available in Lebanon. And this is related to Kuwaiti innovations in terms of trade, which is related to the regional exposure. And this is related to the innovation, to entrepreneurship, and to small and medium-sized projects. We have as well the privatization in order to reduce the burden on the public budget. We are always complaining about a state-oriented economy, and we wanted to empower the private sector. This privatization is very important. However, it needs not jeopardize the concepts of social safety, or what we call the distribution, the pattern of of wealth distribution. Now, in the past, we used to talk about distributing the cash revenues. Now we can talk about companies that could be owned up to 50% by means of public subscriptions. Less than 24% are the property of the government, and the rest is the property of the private sector, be it local or international. And therefore, it is very important to encourage foreign direct investments, which will contribute not only to attracting investments to Kuwait, but to attracting as well innovations and knowledge to inside Kuwait. The IBM have their own centers, and we have as well other companies, such as, for example, Huawei, that has opened its own business center in Kuwait. This is not a financial investment alone, it is as well related to communicating information. And to conclude, this will lead us to a point where we could transfer technology in one direction and to have an exchange of information on the other level until we become producers and consumers, says Mrs. Giselle, so that we are not only consumers. Minister Baroudi, it is said that technology is not immune against risks, and therefore it requires specific legislations in every country. So what has happened in Morocco in terms of the legislations pertaining to technology? A legislation has been enacted in terms of the ethics and that are related to the human resources, and we have to make sure that the technology does not evolve in the direction that is opposite to sustainable development. There are legislations that are related to channeling sustainable device, to channeling technology. What do you mean by the opposite direction? What are the risks? Well, the risks, says His Excellency, are numerous. We have the risks that are related to the human level. If you're going to set people in small boxes, then this is not human. When we talk about the seeds, when we talk about the changing of the fabric of seeds, then this is a problem. Are there national legislations, or do you have international legislations? No, those are legislations that have been set and intended for specific purposes. Many countries had preceded us to this, and Morocco has partnerships agreements, and therefore it is required to align its laws along with the European laws, because Moroccan products are sold on the European market, and therefore this is made in the partnership agreement with Europe, with the US. For example, we export oranges to the US, and there are some conditions and standards that we need to meet should we want to export to the US. We will have as well to adapt to the globalization and the requirements of globalization. Mrs. Giselle, before I proceed with the discussion, anyone wishes to ask a question from the audience, should you wish to raise a point? Maybe one of the delegates wishes to raise a question. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I am from unescwa. My name is Nidal Idilbi. I'm very happy to have their excellencies with us to better benefit from their experiences and from their insight in terms of the developments of technology. A very simple question. We know that Arab countries did not contribute or take part in the former industrial revolutions. And we have always been at the receiving end of technology. And I believe that ICT is one of the technologies that we have used the most in the Arab countries. My question is, could we actually start with a quantum leap in the fourth industrial revolution? I'm not saying that we could actually produce fully technology, but maybe to better nationalize it, to integrate it in the Arab countries separately or jointly. My question is, will we be capable to have this quantum leap or this leapfrog? Or will our past experiences be frustrating, or is there any miracle recipe? We know that there are in Europe very small countries that have engaged in this leapfrog, and many of the countries that have engaged in such a leapfrog have simply developed the relevant policies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. I was wondering whether it's a bit too late, because we always catch industrial revolutions way too late. Your answer, sir. Would you wish to answer the question that was raised, Your Excellency? Of course, this question has been raised for the past couple of years, and we all say that we are only consumers at the receiving end of technology that is produced elsewhere. We were even at one point building the superficial development of our countries on the use of technologies that were imported. Is it too late to engage in this leapfrog? I do not believe that there is one answer, says His Excellency. If we're going to talk about the ICT, and if we're going to talk about the services, and how is it that we can benefit from the services this information technology and communication provides, then this is something very important, because we need to focus on this. This could be possible, or maybe we could have this integration be made possible in more than one country. We have seen many of the young people who have earned international recognition and awards for their achievements, and they have developed unique material which provides some elements of innovation. And they are even purchased by international companies. So the question is that enough? Is this the contribution that you require from the fourth industrial revolution? I believe that this is not the question, and this is definitely not what is required. If we believe that today's revolution, if we're going to talk about the revolution of the information, of the technology, information and communications, then we are required to focus on our contribution when it comes to the digital economy. And we need not actually let go of the production of technology elsewhere. Because if we focus on this aspect, regardless of any other aspect, then we might be fooling ourselves. We are required to focus on building the scientific research that lies within, and we have to start producing it, because focusing simply on the information technology and communications and its role under the main title that we live today in the information society, and that it is enough to see that everybody is engaging towards the use of ICT technology in their daily work, could simply not be true to the facts and reality, and may not lead us into achieving sustainable development. We must not understand that this revolution as being something that is profoundly different from what used to be practiced in the past. It means that we need to engage in new investments while remaining faithful to what had been engaged in the past. So your answer, please, sir. There are two main things that have been raised in this question. which is an acclaimed question. Let's talk about the Arab contribution to the digital revolution. This exists not on the level of Arab countries, but on the level of the brains that are in the West. And this industrial revolution is simply a concept that may not be summarized in its digital content because it is broader. It goes beyond the digital component. Talking about this aspect and discussing the matter requires the contribution of Arab countries in the fourth industrial revolution, which is way easier than its participation in the second and third revolution. Why? Because this revolution itself is linked to innovation and development. You could start thinking while you are still at home, and you could discuss the tools that are necessary to establish the human capital that is necessary in order to provide innovation development, the means of education, the methods of training, in addition to the implementation of developed methodologies that encourage innovation, analysis, and this is part of thinking outside the box. Second, which is related to practical solutions made available. These available practical solutions are actually summarized in some of the scopes below. First of all, using incubators. And the incubators are places where knowledge is produced. And this is acceptable, it is possible, and it has been implemented in many of the Arab countries, and it is made available. These incubators could be related to entrepreneurship. It could be as well related to the youth. So incubators that are producing knowledge are not something difficult in terms of a program that could be implemented. Let alone another issue. All universities that are operating in the Arab countries have the research centers, and they have what they need. However, what they lack is actually a communications network that is available using technology. Today, for example, we could gather using airplanes. However, all this could be made available should we decide to use technology, and you need not to physically move if you want to contact remote areas, of course, using fiber optics. So this is a possibility. Yes, but it is not available in all countries, intervenes Mrs. Giselle. No, it exists in terms of the programs that are related to the entrenching of the information infrastructure that could serve as a tool. What is more important is that what is not available for other countries as a result of the lack of availability of financial resources because this technology is not available, well, allow me simply to inform you that should the private sector be involved, it will be providing us with the relevant sources. Your Excellency, I believe that there is another comment to be raised.
There is no freedom for innovation. Exactly, Giselle says. There is no conducive climate for innovation. We are peoples who are still fond of oppression. Innovation requires support, conducive climate, encouragement. It requires investment. Now, under the absence of freedom, and as I said earlier, the Yemenis are so successful beyond the borders. And the Arab people, that applies to Arab people in general. We were looking once for an assessment company, a consultancy company. It was a US company, and in that company, it turned out that the seven top officials are Arabs, and 5 of those 7 were Yemenis. So in my opinion, once we unleash the possibility for innovation and creativity, change happens. And this is why I asked for legislation and special legislations in those countries that there are no where the needed requirements for creativity and innovation are not available. Allow me to continue, madam. Oppression is also cumulative, and people are not fond of the costly change. More costly than what's happening now? People did not have the chance to continue and to see the completion of change. So the freedom of people is essential. It is crucial to innovation. So innovation is not possible without freedom. We should start to provide more encouragement as we bring up our people in the education systems. So if we keep following others, we will remain consumers. Your Excellency, I would like to stop at an experience. When I used to be a Minister of Education, I noticed that the technological development comes often from the United States. And a few years later, it started to come from the European countries, and we started to send our Moroccan youth there to study and come back with innovations. So we had to stop at those technologies and see what are those technologies that the Morocco needs, and that is how we opened new horizons for developing our technologies. You know, one of the Moroccan innovators had been granted Nobel Prize for innovation in technology. Now, we are working more often with the Moroccan diaspora and those brains abroad. We know that those are bridges to technologies. At the level of universities, we launched a program. Every faculty, every college had to be equipped with more speedy internet. We wanted our community to be involved in this fourth generation of internet. We are living now at a time when we still have generations that didn't actually join the first generation of internet and communications, while some communities are entering into the fourth generation. Do you have statistics, Your Excellency, on these issues? Some countries have statistics, and those statistics say that 80% speak of or have figures as high as 80%. What about the Sultanate of Oman? In our country, connection to technologies is high. Giselle asks, do you provide these incubators, these hubs, this ecosystem, this free ecosystem that encourages innovation? We're trying to do so by different means. First, establishing the fund, the Omani Fund for Technologies. And with a value of more than 200 million US dollars. The objective is to invest in large-scale companies and in emerging and new enterprises in the field, emerging in the field of technologies. There are incubators, yes, there are hubs that allow and encourage for new ideas, or they would invest in an already existing idea and then merge them and connect those startups with larger companies in abroad. You know, innovation requires free thinking and requires a conducive environment. You know that the United States is a pioneer at the level. They launch the ideas are launched at there, and they are implemented in Asian countries. Oppressive environments would undermine innovative thinking. In my opinion, the real integration with advanced universities and state-of-art preaching companies is extremely important. So in this fund, we make sure to invest technically in companies abroad, and we ask them to provide other services in order to help us establish companies in our country. So we want to see this reciprocity in our dealing with those companies. And this is not only restricted to Oman. We had actually invested in a Jordanian company, and in collaboration with our partners, we moved them from Jordan to San Francisco. So the company moved for two reasons. First, to be working in that particular environment that is relative to their technology. Also, their closeness to financing companies and financing institutions and entities. Yeah, accessing large markets. And now their company is valued at millions of dollars. We have remarks from the floor. Thank you. Mahri Nazla Awadi from unescwa. My question. National plans. Did national plans address the idea of how to use technology for the sake of women and integration of women in society and development of women, and in specific and particular terms, not in the broad sense that we need to involve and allow youth to join labor markets? We know that women have specific capabilities. Your national plans, did they address this issue? How to use technology, for example, in eradicating or standing up to violence against women, how to support and help women joining labor forces? We would like to listen to your experiences, and our job at unescwa is to disseminate these experiences to other countries. Other than the Sultanate of Oman, in Morocco, we have more than 50% of females in pursuing technological studies and scientific research. We have 60 to 90% of female medical doctors graduates, medical doctor graduates. In Kuwait, what about your programs, the women empowerment programs? Oman? Also, do you have programs? In the digital strategy of Oman, we had addressed this issue. Now, I believe that it might be high time to put down a plan to allow for men integration. Look at the ministers, they are all men. So that gives you an idea about how how much we need to start developing women's capabilities and allowing them access to higher positions. In Oman, madam, we have full equality at all levels, positions, salaries, and education opportunities. The challenge now is that more than 70 to 80% of the technological fields graduates are female, are women. When we open the when we launch opportunities for startups and entrepreneurship initiatives, we don't see them joining. Now, recruitment in the public sector also is inclusive of women. The challenge now, and it is problematic, and we're trying to plan for it. Most positions, most businesses, most faculties, and scientific research is mainly dominated by females, by women. It's more than, the percentage is more than 97%. It's not a problem. I'm not saying it is a problem. I'm saying we need to understand the real problematic issue or the dilemma that the youth is facing. Why is it why the case is as such? We need to understand this phenomenon. We need to in order to take it into consideration and factor it in our strategic plans. Your Excellency, one of the programs that is now being underway is the National Women Empowerment Program. It mainly, but it focuses on different segments of women. It focuses on the more marginalized segments of society. Now, if we stop at technology, again, see, we are a country at war, and demographic imbalances are a reality. We know, we know now that the role of women will be of extreme importance in the coming years, and I know that the women who are pursuing higher studies will have a greater role. Is that in the future? Is that provided for in your plan? Yes, but we're mainly focusing on, in the plan, we're mainly focusing on the marginalized groups. Now, as far as technology is concerned, we try to address women and involve women in an integrated manner. Now, if we're talking again about women, about the knowledge technologies and digital technologies, I believe women will have better chances at entering these technologies compared to the traditional technologies. Giselle asked, in the previous plan, did the Yemen have programs for women empowerment and women development? Of course. Now, in the current situation, the current crisis, the national dialogue had arrived at a number of outcomes, inclusive of a specific quota granted for women in the fields of economic and political empowerment. So there is a quota for women to join economic and political institutions. Thank you, Madam. we're commenting, or the CNN is commenting a lot on how the mobile impacts the brain. The former Minister of Education was suggesting that children use iPad in schools. I read many reports saying that use of iPads for for more than 2 hours will drive children to become more isolated, and it will impact on their neurological system. So I am I am for the traditional means of education, especially when it comes to the young children. Now, if you look around, and if we consult the previous experiences, we know and we learn that imagination is more important for children to grow better. Also, you know that disposed of computers are being sold to poor countries, and these are causing cancers to the young children who are using them. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for your valuable inputs. As you know, the digital gap between the Arab region and the developed world is huge. Between the Arab world or other developing countries, because of research and science. We all agree that the United States is spending huge funds annually on scientific research. This is why it's the pioneer. It spends huge and humongous funds on scientific research. The Arab countries spend between 1 to 3%. We spend 2.8% on scientific research in Qatar. My question to the excellencies: what we spend on scientific research and the rehabilitation of specialized scientific centers, is it enough to keep pace with the developed countries? His Excellency answered by saying the budgets are weak, are poor in that sense. But if we increase budgets, if I understood the question well, if we introduce more allocations or more items under our budgets for scientific research and innovation, I believe that the problem would be, without the right reactive ecosystem, these investments will keep generating low returns and low benefits. No Arab country, no matter what, cannot keep pace with the developed countries without major efforts. France, the economy of France alone is as important as, or more important than the economies of the Arab world, and it has minimal resources. Give me one Arab country that, and you know that France has so many scientific research centers with and they are trying to equip them with needed resources no matter what. This is not applicable in the Arab world. It's not the same. We don't have the same direction. So when we talk about bridging the gap or removing the gap will not stay static. It will expand, but it will mainly expand because of us. We are the sole responsible for this expansion, for this aggravating gap. We have huge potentials in terms of scientific research. In Morocco, we have more than 500 scientific researchers. They are benefiting other countries. We are poor. We provide the researchers, and those researchers solidify the economies of other countries. Another round of comments or questions? Thank you, madam. Thank you, Madam. I thank the Excellencies. Uh, I believe you're not distributing the floor properly between men and women. The panel has rich experiences. We have countries that are now facing crises. Some Arab countries, some other countries are representing the two geographic extremes of the Arab world, the south and the north. The issue of using technology in sustainable development. His Excellency, the minister from Syria, said we need to recover the development processes and own them. Technologies can help us in that sense. At the first stage, we need to use it in order to make the rulers and the people understand that the world has more than fighting. Another point to His Excellency the Minister from Morocco, without understanding the true integration and what integration really means, we cannot keep pace with the developed world. We need to recover and own the technological processes. That's one. And second, the implementation mechanism need to be synchronized between the different countries. Those countries that produce resources and those countries that use resources. By by saying that we need to own the development processes, I did mean by that we need to use and leverage and harness technology for that. It is no longer a choice. Technology allows us those leapfrogs we were talking about. It allows us to achieve higher achievements. But I mainly stopped at the demand and supply. Now the technologies and the panoply of the panoply of technologies available allow us the choice. We can choose what is suitable and adequate to us and institutionalize them, so that we can use them locally, or we can adapt our curriculums in order to use those technologies in a proper manner and benefit from more. So maybe we need to push forward, to push more towards more investment in those technologies and try to increase the technological added value in our Arab countries, because now we find it necessary to import technologies in order to recover those development processes. In planning, that should be an essential pillar, because this is how we move to owning technologies. On ICTs, their damaging impacts, the physiological negative impacts are so numerous. I believe social damages are more, and they are proven. Any planning, any technological planning nowadays should address these social damages. A question to you, Your Excellency. We have diagnosed, but we did not arrive at an accurate percentage of that reflects the importance of technology nowadays in our countries. In my opinion, or to me, technology is a tool. We can use this tool in multiple forms, in many ways. But maybe we need to go back and revisit the concept of knowledge production. And that was the most important pillar. That is the most important pillar to us, knowledge production rather than technological production. The innovative revolutions did not, around the world did not happen very seamlessly. They were, these innovations took some time, and then they contributed to this knowledge revolution around the world. You're talking about, you're referring to China, I'm referring to many other countries. I'm addressing a general principle. It, we are writing, it is a historic matter nowadays. We need to think of the future. A huge percentage of the Arab population is youth. We need to think of the platforms that those youth need to use and exploit in order to jump to the future. We are working in silos. We need to find ways for more integration and concerted efforts, and it's of extreme, it's something of utmost importance. However, we don't have yet the structures for that. One minute per panelist, per speaker. In the United States, the scientific research starts at a military level, and then in the United in the USSR, that they found themselves in competition, and they developed enormously. So that was the pattern. In the Arab world, we're consuming what the foreign militaries are developing, are producing. You know, all technologies started and developed in the military field, and now we are so absent. We see modest developments while the Western world is jumping. We used, as children, we used to read the story of the turtle and the rabbit, and how the turtle could beat the rabbit. And now, so the question now, should we stick to the road? Should we keep following in the steps of the tortoise, or we should jump to follow the rabbit?
I find that education, freedom, and all other supporting factors, which include awareness among the political leaders, are key. We're talking about products, about outputs, and thus the decision is not in our control. It's in the hands of politicians and decision makers. They need to provide certain rates or certain levels of scientific research. They need to open up more freedom to do research. All these are important components. If they are available, we will move on, or we will remain as consumers. But you are part of the government. Even if I were in the government, I cannot do so solely and one-handedly. There are many obstacles in my way. Politicians are the main obstacle, and not anyone else. I say that investing in technology must be linked to need. Investing in technology is not only limited to the superficial level or the shallow level of the needs provided, but it needs to be deeper than that, but also linked to needs. Investment needs to be linked to a true need, or else it will be superficial, shallow, or it will be targeted to outside the country that it was produced in, and it will not be realistic. Mr. Ambassador, your turn. I will start with a comment, and I second what the previous minister said. We are closer to the infrastructure we need, thus to target our investment in infrastructure. And I thank you for this dialogue. I thank you too, Giselle, for the good running of the session. I thank you, dear officials, ministers. I hope you are not tortoises in this field. No, we will try to be hares. We will try to be hares. Thank you very much.
شكرا لك. انت حركت تبارك الله. احنا في المغرب نقول تبارك الله عليك. تبارك الله عليك. يعني
شكرا لك الله يبارك. اجي الفقره التاليه. برنامج عند من؟ الفقره اللي جايه.